What's happening, guys? So welcome to another episode of the Ready for Anything podcast. This week we're joined by one of our clients in the hot seat again. So this week we're joined by Lucy Main. Lucy's been one of our longest serving clients. The last 3 hot seats we've had have been Kieran, Donna and now Lucy. Lucy's been in the programme since July 2022. We were just talking about it right before this, which is crazy. She's been through a hell of a journey. So we wanted to get her on basically, chat about her story, her experiences and how it's really changed her life and leveled her up as well. So please enjoy the episode. Lucy, so I've been asking folk the last few times I've been doing this, saying, is this your first podcast? And I was actually thinking about that question in itself in 2024. It's mad that you have to ask people, is this your first podcast? And you were saying before it is.
Yeah.
How are you feeling coming on today? Are you excited, nervous?
I'm actually both nervous but also excited to just have a chat and reflect on my time since being in the programme, because there has been a lot of change, and I think when I think back to prior to coming in, that seems like such a long time ago, and I think you sometimes forget just how far you've come, so I'm just excited to chat about it.
Yeah, this is exactly what Kieran said as well, because I asked, the first question I was going to ask you was like, what was life like before? But I think I'll kind of rephrase that, because you were talking about it before in the sense that, what made you join? Like, what was obviously me and you were talking and stuff, but like you'd mentioned right before the podcast that it was like coming back from a holiday. Was that like the big sort of thing that was like, I need to make some changes here?
Yeah, so I had been on 2 holidays that year. So I had been to Cancun, and on that holiday, it was the first time in a long time I had really felt uncomfortable putting a bikini on, wearing tight dresses. I was like, whoa, I feel really uncomfortable taking photos. I found myself looking away from the camera or just picking myself apart, and that hadn't been something I had felt in a long time. And then went on a holiday again a few weeks later, and I was like, no, I need to do something about this, because I feel so uncomfortable, so unconfident, and I found myself going back to how I had been talking to myself years prior, just really low self-esteem. And I was like, I cannot continue this way, especially considering the year before I had just went fully self-employed and fully immersed myself into building a business. And in the midst of that, I had really neglected myself.
Yeah, it's easy to do, and I always remember that conversation, like you can lose yourself when you're building something else very easily as well. And like one of the things I see, especially like we don't just work with coaches, but I have worked with a lot of coaches, is that like the one thing I always say to people, and this doesn't even go for coaches, it goes to anyone that's a manager, a business owner, anyone that's like working with people that you're trying to influence. If you're not careful, you can act like the people that you are coaching, because it's that saying, isn't it? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And it's one thing I see quite a lot, man, is like where people in like roles of leadership, responsibility, where they're the person that people are leaning on, if they're not careful and they've not got like a good standard for themselves, they're not showing up for themselves, like they can begin to tolerate the things that they're trying to help people not tolerate. Do you know what I mean? Like very quickly. So it's so easily done. So how long had you been on like a fitness journey yourself at that point?
Since 2016, 17, that's when I really started getting into fitness and finding myself being really passionate about it. So that was in my final couple of years at school, and that's when I did start going to the gym and doing things like that. But it was something that I had turned to just from being really unconfident, really shy, really suffering from low self-esteem at that point in my life, and I turned to the gym as a way to just feel better mentally. So that was like my main reason for starting. It wasn't anything to do with aesthetics really at that point. It was more just to feel better in myself, and I just wanted to feel strong both physically and mentally, and that's why I started going to the gym and getting into fitness.
Yeah. And then did you feel like, you obviously touched base on there, then did it kind of become more aesthetics focus and like primarily about that?
Yeah, it really did. And my weight was something I had always felt quite self-conscious back then in regards to my weight, and I just felt really weak. I just didn't feel confident in myself at all, or in my own skin, my body. And that was something I found myself wanting to change. When I did start going to the gym, I wanted to feel strong. I wanted to build some shape to my body, build some muscle. because it was something that I didn't feel confident in at all, my body.
You were a bit of a bro when you came into PLU at the time.
Yeah.
You were on the bulk, man.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I was on a bulk for way too long. Like, I didn't want to come out of it. And I think that's what my problem was, because I was stuck in that sort of mindset going back to when I first started, 2016, 2017, not having any confidence in my body and wanting to build muscle and build shape. I found myself being afraid to lose that once I had started building muscle and getting more shape to my body. I found myself not wanting to lose that, and I found myself dropping standards massively in terms of, I remember when I first went into the programme, I was like even scared of steps and cardio. Like, I was like, no, because that will make me lose all my gains and all my muscle. I just, my standards were so low for myself, but I also found myself still picking myself apart even then. So no matter where I was at, I was constantly picking myself apart.
People go through this part in their journey where it's like, I say it quite a lot, and you've probably heard me say it, it's they get focused on the to-dos rather than the to-bes, and they get so caught up in the things that they forget that they're actually trying to make progress, because they try and hold on to, right, I'm here now, I just need to stay here. And it's like, you don't stay anywhere, you just keep making progress. But they actually forget the full reason that you got into it, to be stronger, to be fitter, to actually feel more confident within yourself. And then you actually forget what you're even doing, and you get so caught up in all the things. And I always say, like, people miss the point of what they're even trying to do. Like, I always say to folk regularly, like, well, try to get you to live better here, man. Like, don't forget that, because when you get so caught up in the things that, like, you miss the point. Like, someone said to me recently, like, the brilliant thing about running is you get more steps in. I'm like, you're missing the point of, like, that's not why you run, man. Like, you run to get fitter, to be better at running, to improve your health. Like, that's one part of it, not because it boosts your step count. It's the same with, like, nutrition, where folk will be like, oh, it was great, man. So, like, I was able to just eat what I want because I just didn't eat all day. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. Like, and people are so caught up in the numbers and the steps and the calories that, like, they're overlooking this sort of to try and live better. Of course, these are things, are formalities that you're going to use. Of course, that you're going to have, like, certain standards that you mentioned there. But, like, people are now, like, I call it the advanced diet mindset, where it's like, it used to be like Slimming World was like the advanced diet mindset, but folk have kind of leveled up a bit more in the sense that they are more conscious about how to keep their body composition in order. They actually know all the answers to the things they didn't know before. But that's kind of went full 360 on itself, in the sense that folk gets caught in that trap where everything's just numbers and numerics. And we had some inquiries recently, a couple, and someone said to me, like, it's the thing that kills folks' progress is how assumptuous they are of what they need to do. They're just like, so just so I know, is it just like a check-in, and do you just touch it? And it's like, well, we've not even get started yet, man. Like, it's about you making progress, and folk are so caught up in the things that they forget that, like, oh, I'm trying to make progress here. I'm not like, like, you want to have targets and points you get to and stuff, but that's where a lot of folk fall into the trap of, is the sort of the cut bulk cycle. Yeah,
and I was stuck in that for way too long, and I was asking myself, what am I even doing? Why am I doing this? I don't feel good in myself. I'm not living a healthy lifestyle. I really wasn't. I wasn't getting out and getting fresh air and going for walks. I wasn't focusing on the quality of my nutrition. I wasn't doing the things that I should have been doing that were going to allow me to feel good and that were going to allow me to feel confident. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to be doing, and I'd lost sight in what I was actually doing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, from the outside, people are kind of chanting you on because they're like, oh, you're super fit, and you go to the gym, and you're like, you're sitting going, am I? Like, and it's not that you're doing bad, but it's like, you're like, something's not right here, man. Like, I'm doing all these things on paper that if I was to tell someone that I was doing them, folk would be like, oh, you're really healthy. And you're actually like, I'm probably like one of the unhealthiest I've been. Like, I don't feel healthy.
My weights, I was lifting heavier weights than I'd ever lifted in my life. I was feeling really strong, but healthy, I was not feeling healthy at all.
Blue going up the stairs.
Yeah, I was not feeling healthy at all. And at that point in my life as well, I remember I was just relying on caffeine to get me through the day. I had no energy from the way you would getting out and getting some fresh air and getting your movement in through going out a walk. I wasn't getting energy through things like that. I was getting my energy through relying on caffeine.
White Monster.
Monsters. My clients were bringing me in Monsters, and I was like, need that.
It's it was funny. I wrote down a question. What was it? I said, you went from total gym gal. Because that's what that is now, isn't it? It's like this sort of like, I was going to say gym chick, and I was like, that's quite derogatory, man. But like it is, it's like, and there's like, it's a total, it's the guy version's a bro, and then the one's like a gym gal, and it's like people are like, yeah, I'm in the gym, I'm doing this, and it's like, it's good because then the best intentions are there, but the execution, it's like, folk are missing the point of like, why we do this. And I suppose that's like a culture thing, isn't it? You go in a gym at like 7 a.m, 6 a.m, and there's so many folks sipping on a White Monster, and it's like,
I was one of those people. I'd go in for my 6 a.m. client with a can of Monster.
Yeah.
Had I even had any water?
I know. In your early 20s, man, prime of your life, like absolute fucking energy power plant. And it's like, and it's not, I'm not like, I'm sitting here with a coffee right now, do you know what I mean? I'm not sitting going like, oh, you don't need that, but like, I think we've went into this fitness thing with like the best intentions, but it's actually kind of went the complete wrong way of what people have, like, the way that health actually is, the way that the culture is with it and stuff. It's like, fucking hell, man, so many folk are missing the point of what they're actually trying to live better, which is a big one as well. So obviously that's kind of where you were. Like, what's life like now, 2.5 years on? Like, how different is life now? Like, to give everyone a bit of an idea.
Totally different, and it's crazy. Like I had said before we started this, it's crazy to think back to where I was at before joining the programme to where I'm at now, because so much has changed. So to get quite specific in regards to what actually has changed is quite hard. But overall, I'm just happier, healthier. I'm no longer stuck in that cut bulk cycle that I was stuck in for so long, and all year round I can actually feel really good in myself. I'm getting out my comfort zone and doing things that I never thought I would be doing. Like, I had ran my first 5k in the programme, my first 10k, half marathon. I've done high rocks, photo shoots, and felt really good in my body. I've pushed myself massively out my comfort zone in so many ways, but I'm no longer just doing things to look a certain way. I'm actually doing things just to feel strong, feel empowered, feel confident all year round, not just stuck in that cycle I was stuck in. Yeah,
no, that's amazing. I'm gonna come on to those points, but I think one of the things I wanted to ask you, and like, you've obviously mentioned a lot of those things that you've done, and I had this conversation with Rachel Solway recently, it's in the programme as well, and she went through like a similar journey to like what you've went through as well, and we're discussing the sort of like the big lows and then the big highs that come with doing these different things. And with all those different things that you've done, what's been the sort of biggest point that you were like, no, this is fucking actually quite bad that I'm doing this right now? Was it during the marathon prep, the high rocks? Like, what made you like question everything and actually be like, this is making me feel less confident? Because you lose yourself in the process of doing some of these things. Because I think sometimes folk are like, what's better, focusing on performance and aesthetics? I mean, everything's got its dark sides, you know what I mean, to it? Like, what was the sort of the hardest times that you've had, like pushing yourself and testing yourself? I
feel definitely probably more so recently the marathon. That was a big one for me. But also thinking back to last year when I did my first ever half marathon, as soon as I finished, I told myself there's no way you would ever be able to do another half of that. And that's what made me want to go and do the full one. So of course I signed up to that, but there was a lot going on in my life, like over this past year, that's been hard and challenging for me, and that's what's made the marathon prep even harder than it probably would be if I didn't have so much going on in my life. Because of course that is a really big challenge and a really big event that I'd been working towards, but there was a lot of hurdles that came up throughout that process, and just been really hard mentally going through that, but also still showing up and still ticking boxes when I really didn't think I could. Yeah, there was a point recently where I sent you a voice note and you just sent a voice note back crying because I said I wish some folk could see what you've been through, what's kind of happened, like setbacks and stuff, and like your outlook on it. And that's the thing I've got total admiration for you, Lucy. Like, you just immediately were talking about today where I was kind of going over the questions that I was going to ask you and stuff, and Ailey was saying, I was like, we were just talking about certain things and points, and she was like, Ailey was basically saying that's the thing that you do, Lucy, is that like
you can tell you've been that person. It's not part of your identity. It doesn't hold you back, but like you can tell that you've always been like, I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to do what I can with what I've got. And that's been the recurring theme, is that like you've put your trust. I know that obviously you've only started working with Alien the last year, but like when you work with me, it was always you put your trust in, and I was like, right, we're going to do this, and you'd be like, okay. Like, okay, what does that look like? Where is it at? What's going on? And then you just take action on it as well. And do you mind sharing on like the sort of last year at all with that? Like,
yeah, I feel like I don't want to get upset, but it has just been such a hard year for me personally. Like, and I think I'm still sort of.
If you don't feel ready to talk about it, you don't need to talk about it.
No, I will, but it's just like thinking about it all is like it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stop myself from getting upset.
That's all right. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it. Like, obviously you've been through a lot with your own health and stuff going on with bereavement and the family and that. Like, it's hard.
Yeah. So, of course, last year, that's when things started getting really challenging for me personally, just with sort of a long process of losing one of the most important people in my life. My granddad, and he was very, very much like a dad to me. He was like a dad to me. And that was something that I had been going through, but also I had this conversation with my mum recently. I feel like at that point in time, I had been bottling a lot of my feelings and emotions up, because I was like, no, I need to keep it together. I need to be the one that's helping my mum get through this, helping, like, I just wanted to be that person who had it together. And throughout that process, I did find myself just bottling things up in regards to how I'd been feeling. I'd been still running my business and showing up for my clients, and also going through a lot personally, but just trying to keep it together for everyone else. And then at the end of last year, whilst my granda had been, of course, becoming more unwell, I started taking seizures. So that is something that I had never experienced before. I'd never passed out before. So that was a big scare for me, and I didn't know what had been going on, like what caused this. And it was frightening. It was really frightening. And my mum said, oh, I thought you were the one person I wouldn't need to worry about. And that was just what I wanted for her as well. I didn't want her to be worrying about me. I wanted to be the one that had it all together. And and I think when that happened, it was scary, and just navigating that for the months following as well, when they were getting a bit more frequent, and I still didn't have any answers as to what had been going on. I had been referred to a neurologist for 16 weeks, so there was
unable to drive as well.
There was quite a long process of trying to figure out what had been going on. And then, of course, I couldn't drive, and that was one of the first things they'd say to me when I got to the hospital. And I was still sort of out of it after that first seizure. I was unconscious for about 7 minutes, so I was still sort of out of it and coming to terms with what had happened. And they were like, do you drive? And I was like, yeah. They were like, well, you can't drive for 6 months. And then that was my independence taken away with that. And yeah, it'd just been really challenging the weeks and months following that, because I found myself isolating myself. I also didn't want to leave the house on my own. If I was in the house alone, I'd find myself just phoning my mum or phoning Stuart. Like, I wanted to make sure that I was okay, because I was scared just being alone, because I wasn't sure what was happening, and I wasn't sure when my next seizure was going to be. So it was scary. And then there was a point probably around February, March time that they became quite frequent. And again, I was just really concerned, not sure what had been going on. And then once I'd seen my neurologist, he referred me to, it was a phone consultation. He referred me for an MRI scan, an ECG, because they thought, oh, maybe it's epilepsy. And it's best just to check everything's all good as well through an MRI. And they all came back, like the MRI was clear, which was amazing. And then the ECG didn't show any abnormal brain activity. So it wasn't epilepsy. And I was like, what is going on with me? I just felt like I had no control over my body, and I had no understanding as to what had been causing this to happen. And then I got diagnosed with functional neurological disorder, which I'm still trying to understand. I'm still learning about it. I'm still trying to understand it. I have been seizure-free since March now, which is amazing. So I've not had any seizures since then. However, I still deal with the other symptoms from functional neurological disorder. There's a wide range of symptoms for this. Essentially, my brain doesn't know how to send and receive signals. So it sends signals to the rest of my body, like my nervous system, and my body responds in certain ways through, let's say, seizures, or I've had uncontrollable shaking quite a lot. That's still something I get occasionally, uncontrollable shaking all down my body, my arms, my legs. My speech goes sometimes, so my speech can get quite slurred or tripping over my words. Weakness down one side of my body, and then of course the chronic fatigue as well. So that's something that I've found myself struggling with. Even though I've not been having the seizures, I'm still getting the other symptoms of it, and it has been something I'm still learning about and learning to manage. So yeah, it's been tough, but also I didn't want that to stop me from doing hard things, getting out my comfort zone, proving to myself that I can still do these things that I was doing, but without that fear that I maybe had at the start of the year. Because it was after that I had my first seizure, I'd signed up to the marathon. Mm-hmm. I just thought, no, I still want to be doing these hard things. I want to be showing up for myself and pushing myself and building more mental resilience. But it was probably just a really hard process working towards it.
I appreciate you sharing all that, Lucy, because I know that I don't think you've spoke
no,
openly about this
and
or that
at all.
I think
that's why I still find it quite difficult to speak about, because I haven't really been too open about it, and it's still something I'm learning about and learning to manage. I still don't really know what triggered it. I've actually been referred to a neuropsychologist just to help me have more of an understanding on how to trigger it, because it's not something that can be, how not to trigger it, something that's not able to be medicated. Mm-hmm. So I've got to learn to manage it and have an understanding on what my triggers are. Because they did say it could just be an accumulation of different life events or just things that have been going on personally for you that's then caused this response. But it's also heightened the anxiety of, okay, what is causing it? Because I don't know how to manage it if I don't know what the trigger is. But I'm still learning about it and trying to have more of an understanding over what the triggers have been for me. I
think you feel very empowered after speaking about it today. Yeah. I think raising awareness to it for yourself, you gain control of it. Remember the conversation I had with you? Remember we were like, I was like, I'm not a doctor, and I was like, but the body's got weird and wonderful ways, man, of keep in check.
Yeah.
Like if you hold on to shit, like, and you hold up, emotions are powerful, man. And I used to be like, no, it has to be something that's like you take medicine and it fixes it, and it's like, nah, man, like, and I think a lot of women really, really experience that. Like I was joking to Taylor, we were talking about it the weekend when we were actually away in Madrid with Dale and Gillian at High Rocks as well, that own the studio, and we were saying that like women have got this way of like when there's a problem and you go, you're not talking about like the thing, like you're talking about something else right now, but like there's actually this thing here. And I think just from getting to obviously knowing you really well now, Lucy, like 2.5 years, and you are someone that's like, you probably carry a lot of other people's problems. and then like you then go, right, I'm going to take them, I'm going to hold on to them because I need to be this person right now. Then you're wearing the hat of being the coach.
I do.
You're running the business and doing that, and it's not a problem. It's just like you. But then actually by just talking about this, like, because I know that like your family, your friends, like your clients will be watching this, other people inside RFA will be watching this, and folk will be like, whoa, I didn't know that. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's not a weakness. Do you know what I mean? It's like talking about this stuff, like it's empowering. Do you know what I mean?
And I said this to you guys as well. I remember saying I felt like I was almost lying on social media because I hadn't opened up about it and I wasn't sharing my struggles. There was days I was going into the gym and I had to leave because my body just started uncontrollably shaking, and I was, again, unsure what had been going on at that point in time. So I thought, oh, is this going to lead to a seizure? So I would leave the gym because I had that anxiety around not having control over my body and being alone in that environment. So yeah, it did have a massive impact on my confidence, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that a lot this year. It did have a massive impact on my confidence and just doing things with independence and feeling really, really good. And for a while I just didn't have that. I didn't feel confident. And I even remember when my neurologist told me, this is what you've got, this is what's going on. I just remember I burst out crying because I was like, no, it can't be that. I was like, I've not been stressed, I've not been feeling anxious, no, that can't be. And he was like, you could be potentially have been living in a fight or flight mode for a long period of time, and your body's just, your brain's not been able to handle keeping all that in. You've probably had a lot of things that have just accumulated to this, and I was like, no, there's got to be something else. Like, I'm not the problem. I felt like I was the problem. I was like, surely there's got to be something else. Because, again, I just felt like I had no control over my body at that point in time. And it's a really weird thing because it isn't something that can be medicated. So I thought, am I making all this up is this all just in my head? Like, I felt like that for a long time. And I remember leaving the neurologist that day, and he gave me a couple of websites to go look at, which made me feel a lot better because I didn't have any clue what it even meant. And when I went and researched it, I was like, whoa, this all makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Remember I told you about like stress, and I was explaining it to you when I was in the gym when I worked as a PT, and I wasn't living pure healthy at that point. Like, I was really, really under a lot of stress. Like, me and Ailey, I knew Ailey wasn't very well at that point, but I didn't know she wasn't well at that point. And just my life was like mad. Like, I was just working a lot and was partying at the weekends and stuff. This is like probably 2018. And I was just so stressed one day in the gym, and my vision just went, I just couldn't see. I just couldn't, like, I literally was in the gym and I was like, I could see, I wasn't like just black, like, but I was like, my full vision went like tunnel vision, and then literally in at the sides there, I could only see straight ahead, and everything was just fuzzy. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck, man, what's happened? And then I was like, and then I like took a session and it started to come back, but then like my right eye was just fuzzy, and I was talking to a client, I was like, I can't see my hand right now, like I can't see my hand. And I went to the optician, and they done a test, and I was like, I must have a fucking tumour in my brain or something, man. Like, or like, I'm thinking like worst case scenario, and they're like, nah, your vision's fine. They're like, there's nothing. They looked, see, they look in with the retina. I don't know what it's called. I'm not even going to try and pretend what it's called. They looked at it with that big camera, and they're like, nah, it's fine. Everyone's all good, man. Like, you've got like 20/20 vision. Like, you're good. And I was like, that was my first time of being like, this is how I'm living. This is actually my lifestyle is creating this, and it made me kind of understand. I always remember that folk think stress is like pulling your hair out. Stress is like chemical, physical, emotional. So chemicals like caffeine, alcohol, recreational drugs, prescription drugs, the food, the quality of food you eat, is it processed, like what you put in what's your gut feeling like. Physical training, what I'm feeling right now after doing that event at the weekend, like feel I've been hit by a train. Sleep, fatigue, emotional is like what you've just explained there. So you are self-employed, running a business, going through loads of change in your life, like pushing yourself, testing yourself. There's a bereavement, and you're like, obviously you know that your granddad's really, really ill at this point, and you know he's he's got terminal illness, and it's just all these things, and then you go, but you're not sitting there going, like I'm stressed. It's an accumulation, and I don't think people really recognise what stress is. Like, oh, I'm not stressed, like I'm happy, and it's like, I'm not saying you're not happy, like there's just a lot of things going on, and that, like, to me, like I was having this conversation with someone today, like resilience is awareness of your suffering. So that when you're able to actually have the awareness to acknowledge that, wait a minute, man, like I'm flying too close to the sun here, and that just builds up. And you remind me a lot of my cousin Rachel, like your tendencies and like your nature and stuff. And she's a very caring person as well. And she's like, it's something that you can see that in certain people, with the way that they take on things and they take on other people's problems and they carry that and stuff as well. Then being a coach as well, do you know what I mean? Like you're carrying a lot of other people as well, and it can it teaches you though, man. Like you look back at this point, Lucy, and you'll be like, oh man, that taught me a lot. Do you know what I mean?
100%. I feel like going back to the end of last year when I had that first seizure, I was just like constantly go. I had a lot going on, but I was sort of just getting on with it. And my mum always says you just got on with things, but inside I probably was struggling quite a lot, but I didn't have that awareness to recognise it myself, because I was like, no, I'm fine, I've got this, I've got it together. And it was that last day, and I had just finished up for Christmas, so I had just finished my last few client sessions on the gym floor, was taking a bit of time off, and I got home and had my breakfast, went in a shower, and that was it. It was as if my body was starting to relax and my brain didn't know what that was, because I had just been so go, and it just, I think that's what then accumulated to that first seizure. Yeah,
I think you have to go through like a massive sort of breakdown sort of point, and it doesn't just come in the form of like an emotional breakdown. It can come in all different ways, shapes and forms, man. I think everyone has to go through it. I think I'm not trying to be presumptuous here, or like assumptuous, not presumptuous, like I'm not trying to overstep my line, but I think you get a lot of the answers, like the fact that you've not had a seizure since March, and the fact that you're actually gaining more awareness and control over it. Like, I think it won't be something you live with. I think it'll be something you go, well, wait a minute, like your body's very powerful when you don't respect it, and it's not just, your energy's not just about your calories and have I hit my steps. It's like am I looking after myself here? Like, am I like taking on the world, or am I doing the things that I need to do for me? So I think you get a lot of the answers to the things that you're looking for, like just continually going forward, and that's it. You need to just keep going through these lessons, and that's all they are. The lessons. And but that's the thing as well. And I said I never told anyone what was going on and stuff, but like sometimes I'd be like, I wish people could see like someone that was maybe going through a similar point, and like they're moaning about something trivial, and I'm not, and you never moaned once, Lucy. You never moaned once. You just like, well, like, this has happened, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this, and you were upset, and it was down, and like, but you just cracked on with it, man. And I think sometimes people need a bit of perspective, because like when something happens, it's like the world's fucking ending, man. And you're like to people, like, you're not dying. Like, you've got your health, like, but then actually when you're in a position where you get information like that, and it changes everything, doesn't it? You're like, how's this going to impact my future? Is this deteriorating? Am I going to have to live with my parents for longer than I thought? Like, is it like, how's this going to impact my relationship? Like, what about my career? Like, am I going to be able, like, what's going on? Like, it just changes everything, doesn't it? And it's like, it's so hard to be able to still turn up when you're feeling that way.
Exactly. And when I think back to that last one I had in March, it's funny because a couple of weeks after that was when I lost my granda, and that's when I stopped having my seizures. Of course, I've still had those other symptoms from FND, but it's crazy how much I just probably was still really stressed and just had a lot going on mentally back then. And it's interesting because I've had a lot of positive changes in my business this year as well. Over the past year, I've said this, it's been one of the worst years personally for me. It's been a really tough year personally, but it's been equally one of the best years for me professionally in terms of my business and rebranding my business, moving fully online. I had already planned to go fully online with my business at the end of last year, and because of everything that had been going on, not being able to drive, my mum was taking me into the gym at 5:30 in the morning for my first client of the day. She was like, I'll help you as much as I possibly can. So she was still taking me in, and then it was, I think, March time, I was like, no, I can go fully online now
Silver
instead of
lining,
July.
isn't it?
So I ended up moving my business fully online back then, which was sooner than I had intended to. But it was that thing that made it happen sooner.
Yeah, that's it.
Which was a goal.
Yeah. So it just shows you, and we were talking about this in the last podcast we had on, we were chatting about lockdown, and it's like how it like forced a lot of people's hands like to do things, and that's the silver lining sometimes. And a lot of folk can, like, for a lot of people, see with that could become their identity, where they go, yeah, I've got, is it FND? They're like, yeah, like every time you meet someone, I've got FND. You know what I mean? Like, and you're like, oh, are you the FND person? Like, but that's what happens, because folk then attach that, and then that limits their progress in other areas. Whereas you were like, no, like I'm not going to use that as like the reason for the thing for me to be here or do that, man. So I think a lot of people will really appreciate you sharing that, Lucy, because I appreciate you sharing it as well. I know you've not spoke about it. That's why I was like, I seen you getting upset, and I was like, I don't have to talk about it. No, I appreciate you sharing that. So, like, obviously through all that, and just over the last couple of years, like, how valuable has it been having coaches in your corner or having support in your corner throughout that?
Oh, so important. I really value just having you guys there to soundboard off of, and still know that I can show up for myself, and I can have those conversations, open and honest conversations with you guys, and you understand what's going on, and you're in my world, but also know that I'm not just going to settle for low standards and not doing things that I need to be getting done. Mm-hmm. I'm still willing to push myself. I'm still willing to grow, get out my comfort zone. But I would say that would have been a lot harder for me had I not had that support. Mm-hmm. I know it would have been. I know I would have, because before joining you, and even at the start of being in the programme, I was so guilty of burying my head in the sand again. It was the way I've always been, just, I'll get on with it. I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me. But when I started opening up more and taking my head out the sand, when you'd ask me how I was, it wasn't just, yeah, I'm good. I would tell you what had been going on and let you into my world, and that's only benefited me since. Yeah.
See that, that's the thing that a lot of folks struggle with, where they go, I didn't want to bother you with it. I didn't want to tell you about it. What would you say to someone, like, because that didn't happen overnight. Like, because I remember that I used to be like, Lucy, you need to tell me, like, what's going on, what's happening. Like, what would you say to someone that's kind of at that point, that's maybe got that belief that, like, they hold a lot of things to themselves? Like, what advice would you give to that person?
It's only going to have an impact on your progress, and you're only holding yourself back and getting in your own way, because you might think, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you don't need to share something that you feel that maybe the coach doesn't need to know, because I have these conversations myself with my own clients. I actually spoke about it on our weekly call this week. You need to be communicating effectively, because if you keep things in, it's only going to then spiral. Like, weeks down the line, you might be still keeping that one thing to yourself, and it has such an impact. Yeah. And you don't realise until you just say it out loud that it's off your chest, and it gives you clarity and a different perspective, because you're then getting to have that conversation that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't just said it out loud. Yeah,
because I think a lot of folk think when they're saying you're asking for help, you have to have a question. Folk are like, I don't have a question. It's like, you don't have to have a question. You just have to kind of keep folk in the loop.
Soundboard, yeah.
And like, just go, right, guys, just to let you know, here's where I'm at, here's what's going on. And like, what you may find off the back end of that is immediately someone comes back and you just hit the nail on the head. They give you a bit of perspective on it, that like I had this conversation with someone yesterday, and they were basically talking about like they basically drink at the weekend, and they've been saying phrases, they don't want to drink anymore, it doesn't serve them. And they actually done a period of sobriety before, and they were like, the mad thing is like, I done it before when I was around these people, but now when I'm doing it, and I just said, I went, you were a different person then, and you were taking a break from alcohol. Now you're actually wanting to step away from alcohol. So like, you need to understand that like, you were a different version of you then to now. And they were like, that makes total sense. I was like, and they weren't asking me anything. They were telling me how they felt. They were telling me their experience at the weekend. They were telling me, and I just basically went, yeah, but that's different. And they were like, so it is. That's totally different. So it's not even that someone's coming in and going like, how do I do this? No. how do I overcome this? Like, it's like you're just saying what you say, and a lot of folk just don't see I call it cadence. It's like you need to have this like cadence back and forward with someone, because if the cadence doesn't exist and it's all like one dimensional and it's all just like one way, you're not going to make any progress, because that's where the saying comes, the quality of your life is dictated by the quality of questions you ask yourself. And I used to hear that and I'd be like, what does that mean? Kind of get it, don't really get it. Like, how do I know what questions to ask myself? But it's not that you're necessarily asking yourself questions, it's the fact that you're just like, you're being curious, like you're just vocalizing rather than just going like, right, I'll just sort everything out in my head, because your mind is biased.
Yeah, I used to be really guilty of that.
Yeah.
And I think as well, because it was the first time I had a coach, but also being a coach myself, I was trying to like solve things out myself in my own head, even though I definitely needed that other perspective and being able to look at things through a different lens. I just wasn't communicating things that I didn't think you had to know, but it was those things I didn't think I had to say out loud that I needed to say out loud the most.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely see with people that are in, not even just coaches, but folk that are in roles of responsibility, where they're like, no, this is the stuff I help folk with. This is one I hear quite a lot. If someone's in like management or leadership, they're like, I tell folk this stuff all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a difference between knowing and doing. Like, you can know, like, you know what to do, but like, can you do it? Can you put it into practice? And that, it's like a trap that you get from like the letters next to your name or the title that you have, that you go, oh, like, I used to call it the PT trap, but it's not even the PT trap, it's the letters next to your name trap. Or I'm a doctor, or I'm a CEO, or I'm a personal trainer, or and it's like, yeah, but like, have you overcame the thing that you're struggling with? And it's like, no, it's like, well, those letters are worth fuck all. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you need to overcome that thing that you can't overcome right now. And it's that the letters next to your name ends up becoming the biggest thing that holds you back, because it's not even that you think you know more than you do, you assume you know more than you do. Even you're like, well, I should know how to do this because I do this and I help folk with this, and it's like, yeah, but you don't. And
I was like, wait, I'm here for a reason.
Exactly.
Utilise the support that you've got available, and soundboard how you're feeling and what's going on in your life, because when I wasn't doing that, it would be 3-4 weeks later, and that would be the thing that had been holding me back. Yeah. Because I hadn't just communicated. Yeah.
What's what's like the biggest thing that you feel that you've like really gained from being coached, being part of Ready for Anything, that kind of took you by surprise?
Oh, that's an interesting one. The biggest thing, I would say my mental resilience. And yeah, that is something that I have gained a lot of in the past couple of years. Like, me now, and what's happened in this past year, and how I've still been able to show up for myself the way that I have. Of course, it's been hard. It's not been easy, but that wouldn't have been something that I'd have been able to do this time 3 years ago. Not a chance. Mm-hmm. Not a chance. That would have been my excuse. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's not.
Yeah. Would you say that you've actually, it's not like not even the mental resilience, but actually understanding the value and discipline,
the value and discipline, because that's the thing. Discipline is being able to show up and do those hard things, and the actual hard things that I wouldn't have been able to, that I would tell myself I wouldn't have been able to do before.
Have you heard of the Jocko Willink thing? Willink? I can't remember. But it said discipline equals freedom.
And it does.
Yeah. Because if you do more of the thing, that when that actually thing is dealt your way, you choose it and you're able to manage it. Whereas like if it's always, if you're avoiding it, you're not taking it on, you're taking the easy route, the path of least resistance, the hard chooses you. Yeah. I mean, so it's that same, what is it? Hard things, easy life, easy things, hard life. And it's so true. And that's the point I'm always trying to make to folk when I'm saying, like, it goes back to that point of missing the point. I'm like, I'm not asking you just to do this for, or encouraging you just to do this for body composition reasons. Like, this is actually going to like teach you like values that like you're then going to take into other parts of your life that's going to massively aid you going forward. Because a lot of folk will say they're resilient, but they're not. They're stubborn, and they're confusing stubbornness and grit with resilience. And resilience is the ability to actually go, I'm doing that thing again. Like, oh, like this is just, don't get overwhelmed, or yeah, remember this happened before, just do this now. That's the thing to focus on. And it really teaches you that. And I think like the idea of being resilient is cool, isn't it? like that. Like everyone wants to be like, yeah, I'm quite resilient, and it's like, but are you? Like, are you really? Because it's one of the things that a lot of folk. A conversation I had with someone recently as well, where they were saying like, I really understand why I'm doing this. Like, yeah, I've got these goals and these ambitions, but like I can see the part that you're really talking about and the discipline part. Like I understand that like this is actually giving me so much more control over my life. Because a lot of folk are just they're being piloted by other things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wasn't willing to just let life happen to me, because I could have easily done that. I was absolutely not willing to let that happen. And that's why I had to remind myself the value and discipline, like you were saying, it does equal freedom. I didn't want that to control how this year went for me. Yeah,
100%. So we kind of touched base on the part before about the marathon. What was the full sort of like marathon like? Because like to give everyone a bit of an idea, like you were like a non-runner, like, and you mentioned you've done half marathons, 10Ks, like all these different events, push yourself at high rocks, like. But the marathon was obviously like quite a big thing for you, and you done that. Like, was it start of this month? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it actually was. It was the start of this month. Mad. So yeah, crazy. I still just can't believe, given the circumstances, what had been happening on the lead up to it, just the fact that I did it. So proud of myself. And yeah, it was a really, really big challenge for me. And yeah, I'm proud of myself for doing it. But of course there was a lot of things along the way, and you don't come away from those experiences like the marathon day. A lot of my big lessons didn't come from that day. It was from the prep of it and working towards it. That was just a day to go and do the thing. Yeah. Whereas the weeks on the lead up to it were bloody challenging. Yeah. Of course, a couple of months before I had been on my holiday and came back, had a lot of swelling in my ankle, my leg. I couldn't run for a couple of weeks. I could hardly even put weight on my leg and walk on it. And then a couple of weeks later, it was like, right, let's get back to marathon training. And then, of course, there was the challenges just along the way, training, like with my knee and my foot. But yeah, it was just, I need to keep going. I need to get through this and get to this day. Even though there was days and there was weeks where it was so bloody hard. But yeah, the day got through it, and so proud of myself for it. Yeah.
It's amazing doing an event abroad as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's a good experience, and for someone who loves to travel and see new places, that's why when I was signing up for it, I was like, no, I need to do it somewhere that I've not been and I've not seen, so that I can see a new place.
What did you think of Lisbon?
Running. It was so good. I loved it. The one thing I found hard about the marathon is when I was doing it, there wasn't many crowds. Yeah. There wasn't crowds everywhere. It was a coastal marathon, so it was all along like the sea. So once it got to the point where it was maybe like not too many people running together, there wasn't really many crowds, and that's something I found quite challenging about it. There wasn't many crowds, and when I've done my half marathons before, there's been crowds of people the entire way, and that wasn't the case during that one, so I found it harder in that sense.
Did you have anyone you latched onto that you were like, I'm racing them secretly?
It's funny because there was an older guy and I was like, I'll keep up with him. He was like my person that I would keep tabs on during it. But yeah, I would say that the marathon itself was really challenging, and it was around like 27K. I was like, right, this is just the
rest.
That's
where it always happens.
Yeah, the rest of this, I'm just in pain and I've just got to get through it. But even the first 10K, I was getting in my own head a lot, and I was like, there's no way I can do this. Like, you know, the night before I had 2 hours sleep, which is not good. I couldn't sleep. And then, yeah, it was. I felt like I was just getting in my own head from the get-go. And when I seen Stuart, I think it was 12K in, it gave me a wee boost of encouragement just to keep going, because I was like, there's no way I can do 42K. I was struggling in the first 10K because I was getting in my own head. I was letting that voice in my head win, telling me that there's no way I was going to finish it. And I wasn't expecting to see him at that point. So I think when I seen him, I was like, no, you can do this. Just keep going. And I think when I got to around 15K, I got into that sort of flow state. And it was when I hit 26, 27K and my knee was getting really sore. And I hadn't had that in a couple of weeks. So when that started getting sore, that was me in my own head again.
Yeah. It's mad. You go through, like, I say, and stuff like this, you go through like a year of emotions in a day, in like a couple of hours. You're just like, you're like going through so many different highs and lows. And the more you do stuff like this, like, you need to build up belief. Like, I had this conversation with someone recently where I was saying, like, the thing that you want right now, you're not ready to do. Like, so that can be from like a body transformation standpoint, a training standpoint. And you, like, we were talking about this in the call the other week, but it was like the confirmation bias of like whatever you choose to believe, that will become your reality. So if you've got limiting beliefs there, like, which there's definitely been limiting beliefs, obviously you're doing a fucking marathon and you've not been a runner. There's so many contradictory stories there, but every time you go and do something like this, like, you add to your undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are, and then you give yourself more credibility. So then when you go to the next thing or the next challenge or whatever that is, you've got like another string to your bow that then gives you more confidence and competence within yourself to then be like, no, I'm going to go harder at this. I'm going to hit this even more. And I think that's the amazing thing about like pushing yourself and testing yourself like this. Like, it kind of makes you go, I'm going to play the game harder now, because like, and it's not that you weren't playing the game hard, but you start to kind of, it's totally mindset. Like, it's obviously totally physical, but like all this stuff like builds character. It makes you a better person doing stuff like this.
Yeah, and there was so much self-doubt going into that marathon. There was so much self-doubt, and I think a lot of that was just due to the lead up to it and things out with my control happening, which meant I had to miss certain sessions, which really bothered me, because I was like, I can't be missing a beat with my training here. I'm training for a marathon. And then, of course, with my injury, I think that was something that I had in the back of my mind as well. Oh my God, is my knee going to get sore? Is my foot going to get sore whilst I'm doing the marathon? And when's it going to happen? Is it going to stop me from completing it? So that's in your head. But I know that marathon day wasn't a reflection of my true potential. It was a reflection of what I had been able to do in that marathon prep.
Yeah, so I had this conversation with someone on the podcast recently. It was probably more about survival. Like,
it was literally more about survival for me that day.
And that's what I said at the weekend. I'd done the Madrid Pro Singles for the first time in the weekend, and it was a race up until the sled pull, and it became survival. And I was like, I need to just get around this. Yeah. And that's like, it's when I know what you mean. Like, I totally get what you mean, and it's like the difference. Like, now when you go at things, you'll be like, right, I can hit this. But again, circumstances, lessons. Now you know what you know now, and you could have never taught yourself that. Like, you had to go through and feel that. And then that's the thing. Like, there'll be a point down the line, Lucy, where like folk will be like, "How did you just run that marathon in like 3 hours and 10 minutes?" And you're like, "Well, let me tell you, in the last so many years, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this." And it's like, that is like, folk don't realize it's not just as simple as I've done this training block and I've done this thing. It's like, it's all your lessons, it's all your failures, it's all your fuck ups, it's all the pain that you go through, the self-doubt that you experience, that you have to feel that to then go, oh, that's what that feels like. And I have to remind folk, I'm like, yeah, it's hard. Like, that's why, like,
you need to remind me as well. Yeah, like, it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah, it's like really, really hard.
Challenging. You're supposed to be experiencing feelings of self-doubt. You've never done anything like this before, and I had to remind myself that I have never stepped into this territory before. It's unknown territory. Of course you're going to be doubting yourself because you've never done it before. Yeah. You're going through the feelings and the emotions of doing your first ever marathon and coming up against all these challenges along the way. And I was still so proud of myself. I was still so buzzing just after doing it that day. But in the back of my mind, I was like, right, now I know that I can do this after overcoming all the hurdles that I have overcome throughout the training for it. Yeah. And I think that got me excited as well, because I was like, I know next time it's going to be different. Yeah. And how good is that, coming away from things? And like, this is what I love about our guys inside RFA, where I'm always like,
that's the mindset that I want folk to have with their training, to go be better, to chase progress, and not, because folk do stuff like this and they're like, oh, I've done that now, and I'm like, no, I'm like, that's not the lens that you look at it through, that you go, you don't have to like become a full-blown marathon runner because you've done a marathon, but like, I mean, and like, go and beat what you've done, go and like that's just the wee cherry on top that you do that teaches you all the lessons, but go back to the drawing board and go and be better, like, because if you do that, like, that's where the fun lies. Like, the success is in the process of getting to there. That the days are just like awesome days that are weirdly awesome, that you go through hell, then you're like, let's do that again. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
But no, it was awesome to see, and it was really, really, like, I know obviously that's why me and Ailey were talking about who did we want to get next on the hot seat, and we were like, we need to get wee Lucy on to talk about everything, even the last year and stuff. So I appreciate you sharing everything and talking about everything so openly as well. Like, a lot of folk will take so much value from that, Lucy. And
I hope so.
yeah, no, definitely. And you will as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, you feel that a wee weight off your shoulders talking about it and stuff as well.
It always does feel like a weight off my shoulders. And like I was saying, I have kept a lot to myself, and I did feel like I'd had this conversation with you guys. I'd been open with my clients in regards to what had been going on and with my seizures and things like that, but I hadn't shared it online. I just think because I didn't have a full understanding at that point as to what had been going on, I didn't feel comfortable going on and speaking about it. But there was that weight on my shoulders, and I felt like I was lying in a way, because like I said, I was missing sessions. I wasn't showing up to my maximum expectations every single week. And that's something we all go through.
Everyone goes through shit. Do you know what I mean? They do. I wonder how many folk cried as well listening to this when you were getting upset. I was getting teary, man. I was like,
I need to stop myself.
See, when people get like teary on the podcast, I get teary. I'm like, why am I doing this?
It was as soon as you asked me, it all just like came to the front of my mind, and I was like, oh God.
I like feel other people's emotion. Like when I had Stephen Curry on the podcast the other week, and
that was a really, really good listen. I listened to it.
And I started getting emotional when he was talking, and same like you, like when folk get emotional, like I feel it. Like I'm like, oh, have I just done that? like I know I've obviously asked that question to see and stuff as well, but yeah, it's powerful, man. Because a lot of folk, I think sometimes folk don't really acknowledge that they've got stuff going on.
There's power in vulnerability.
Yeah, there definitely is, man. There really, really is. But yeah, like just before we round things off, Lucy, like what's next then? What's next for Lucy? What
is next? I know, I feel like, do you remember the weekly call you done, and it was like you're going to go through points in time where you're in a bit of a McDonald's phase. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, am I in that phase right now off the back of my marathon?
Yeah, in the McDonald's
I feel like I'm sort of in that phase at the moment, but I'm also excited for what's to come in terms of just life, business, pushing myself more personally. But yeah, I'm just excited to keep growing and keep getting out my comfort zone and proving to myself that I'm capable of doing things personally, professionally, just in all aspects of my life that I told myself that I would never be able to do. Because I've got a lot of exciting goals in life. Like, you know, one of them is to move away from my hometown.
Yep.
And that's something that I'm still trying to find.
Why would you want to leave Inverclyde?
Greenock.
Does it fall under Inverclyde?
Yeah, it's in Inverclyde, yeah. I'm still trying to find clarity in regards to what that's going to look like for me. But yeah, moving out, just continue to push myself out my comfort zone and yeah, just keep growing in all aspects of life.
Oh, it's exciting, man. And you can feel it. You can see when folk have just got that. They're not just doing things to do them and tick a box. They're doing them because they're like, no, I want to see what I'm capable of here.
Just
and it's
break through the glass ceiling.
That's it, man. And it's exciting we've got so many clients like yourself, Lucy, but it's class. Like, you're just like, you're not here because you need to be here. You're here because you want to be here, and you're here because you value it. And you're like, I've got goals and ambitions, and I know that like being immersed in this process is gonna get me there a hell of a lot quicker. It's gonna make me grow. So no, thanks very much for coming on, Lucy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you took a lot away from it. As always, leave your comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Leave your comments. I think you can do it on Spotify now. Rate the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, and I'll also tag Lucy in the show notes as well, so you can find her on Instagram. I'll put that both in Spotify and on YouTube as well. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.